Welcome to Summary of the Week, your quick guide to the top headlines. Today is Saturday, October 25th. Here's a recap of some of the major events this week. President Volodymyr Zelensky's meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump on Friday, October 17th, did not yield Ukraine's hoped-for result, that being agreement that the U.S. would sell Kyiv Tomahawk missiles. Earlier in the week, Trump had spoken favorably of supplying Ukraine with Tomahawks as a cudgel to push Russia to peace negotiations. But then on Thursday, just before meeting with Zelensky, Trump held a phone call with his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin. In that phone call, the Russian leader is thought to have changed Trump's mind. Coming out of the call, Trump said that he and Putin plan to meet in Budapest. Trump also said that the front lines could be frozen where they currently are. Kyiv and its European allies expressed willingness to accept Trump's plan, but the Kremlin snubbed it and the planned Budapest meeting, with Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov claiming that it didn't address the so-called root cause of the conflict. Russia's root cause for invading its neighbor changes from day to day. And on Monday, Bloomberg reported that the U.S. is holding back on a G7 plan to use frozen Russian assets to finance Ukraine, citing fears of market instability. European leaders are pushing ahead with a €140 billion reparations loan proposal, but U.S. reluctance could jeopardize the initiative's scale and credibility. In Tuesday's early hours, Ukrainian drones struck deep inside Russia, targeting a Rostek explosive plant in Mordovia and an oil complex in Dagestan. These attacks, approximately 1,200 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, mark some of the deepest known drone strikes on Russian territory. While regional officials reported no casualties, the strikes disrupted key military, industrial, and energy infrastructure. Elsewhere in Russia, an explosion damaged the Pskov-St. Petersburg Railway, a vital military supply route for the Kremlin. Ukrainian intelligence sources reported that the blast halted train movement and ignited a freight train fire, likely involving military cargo. Russian authorities cut mobile internet access in the region to control information flow. Around midweek, news went viral that Russia's Children's Rights Commissioner, Maria Lvova-Belova, who along with Putin is wanted by the International Criminal Court for child abductions, boasted on Russian TV about taking a 15-year-old Ukrainian boy from Mariupol to Russia. She claimed the teen, who opposed Moscow and loved Ukraine, eventually accepted his new life in Russia. Lvova-Belova said she met the boy when he sought safe passage from Russian soldiers who had razed and occupied his home city in May 2022. At least 19,500 Ukrainian children are thought to have been kidnapped by Russia since the start of its full-scale invasion. According to recent reports, many have been subjected to forced re-education and militarization, including some who have reportedly been made to produce military equipment, such as drones for Russian forces. Early Wednesday morning, Russian forces launched a massive combined drone and missile strike on Ukraine's energy infrastructure, targeting thermal power plants and oil facilities across multiple regions. In Kyiv, residential buildings in the Dniprovsky and Donetsky districts were hit, resulting in fires and casualties. Mayor Vitaly Klitschko reported 2 deaths and 5 injuries, including a 2-year-old child. The attacks also caused power outages nationwide, with emergency response teams working to restore services. President Zelensky condemned the strikes, calling for stronger international sanctions and support for Ukraine's defense capabilities. On the same day, a Russian drone struck a kindergarten in Kharkiv, killing 1 and injuring 7. All children, numbering about 50, were safely evacuated as teachers had brought them to the basement. In a stern response, President Zelensky vowed that bandits and terrorists can only be put in their place by force. Some hours after the Russian attacks, President Trump announced sweeping sanctions on Russia's top oil firms, Rosneft and Lukoil, set to take effect November 21st. The move targets Moscow's war funding and warns foreign buyers deal with these companies and face penalties. Also on Wednesday, Ukraine and Sweden signed a letter of intent for defense cooperation, paving the way for future transfers of Swedish Gripen fighter jets to Kyiv. Zelensky expects no fewer than 100 aircraft, but Sweden says deliveries won't start before 3 years from now. Early Thursday morning, Russian drone and missile strikes targeted Kyiv and other cities, causing fires and casualties. In Kyiv's Podil district, a kindergarten and residential buildings were damaged, injuring 7 people. a synagogue was also hit, marking another attack on religious sites. In Kharkiv, a rescuer was killed and 5 others wounded when a second strike targeted emergency crews. Sumy's railway station was also struck, injuring 2 workers. Then, early Friday morning, Russian forces launched guided bomb strikes on Kharkiv's industrial district and shelled Kherson, killing 2 civilians and injuring at least 21, including 3 children. The Kharkiv attack damaged over 20 vehicles and a civilian enterprise. In Kherson, a minibus was hit, and the wounded children, aged 15 to 17, suffered concussions and shrapnel injuries. On the same day, in London, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer was scheduled to host over 20 of Ukraine's allies in a Coalition of the Willing summit. The gathering's purpose was to accelerate military support for Ukraine with a focus on delivering additional long-range missiles. President Zelensky was scheduled to attend, having just concluded talks in Brussels to secure further financial backing. The UK has pledged to expedite the delivery of 100 air defense missiles ahead of schedule. The summit also sought to address the issue of frozen Russian assets, exploring ways to unlock funds to support Ukraine's defense efforts. Our summary of the week goes to Friday afternoon, Kyiv time. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you back here next Saturday.